Good afternoon, everybody. This has been such a great day of Windows Tech Community Sessions, Tech Community Live Sessions, starting off with Windows Update, managing AI and agents, Windows Backup and Restore, and now we have accessibility. My name is Joe Lurie. I am here with two accessibility experts. We have Laurie and we have Ben. I'm going to ask you all to introduce yourselves, and then we're going to start talking about accessibility, about Ignite. We're going to start answering some questions. Laurie, go ahead and introduce yourself, who you are, what you do at Microsoft, and then we'll go to Ben.
Thanks, Joe. Super excited to be here today. So my name is Laurie Allen. I lead our global commercial accessibility program here at Microsoft. So I work alongside our enterprise customers to help them on their accessibility journeys, from building an inclusive work environment for your employees with disabilities, all the way through to helping you build accessible products and services for your customers.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for joining us today, Laurie. Ben?
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Ben Watt. So I am a cloud solution architect within our AI business solutions group. So I work within the customer success unit. I'm an accessibility champion. So part of my role is talking to customers about the various accessibility offerings we have and what accessibility means for Microsoft. And Joe loved the dancing at the beginning there.
I do a lot of these tech communities, and I actually love that music that we start off with, and I can't help but just get into the rhythm of it. Um, uh, so we just finished Microsoft Ignite a couple of weeks ago. It's, a lot of people know that's really Microsoft's, the Super Bowl of our IT Pro conferences. And we did have some great accessibility announcements. Laurie, what was one of your favorite announcements or one of the favorite new things that we've announced at Ignite?
Well, I'm super excited about Fluid Dictation, which will be available in Voice Access. So Voice Access is built right into the Windows operating system, and it's a tool that I use. I have a mobility disability, so I have some arm function. I don't have hand function. So I leverage speech-to-text technology all day, every day. And Voice Access is a tool that I can use my voice to navigate around my laptop. So I can open applications, close applications, convert speech to text using Voice Access. And at Ignite, we introduced Fluid Dictation, which helps improve grammar. It corrects grammar. It takes all the ums and ahs and the filler words that we use all day when we're dictating to our laptop. So super excited to get started with Fluid Dictation.
That's great. Being a grammar person myself, I do love that we have things that can correct grammar, but also that can remove those filler words. Because when you're watching a video, some of you are not watching this live, you'll be watching it on a stream over the next, who knows, weeks, days or weeks. You'll start noticing some ahs and ms, and it's nice to have those removed post-production, I suppose.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Laurie. Ben, what about you? What are some of the announcements that you've heard?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of standout ones I had from Ignite, and one is that we're taking the natural voices that we first introduced to Windows 11 for Narrator, which is the screen reader software, as well as Magnifier. We're taking what we introduced a couple of years ago to Windows 11, and then we're giving it a bit of AI secret sauce, I guess, and we've introduced natural voices high definition. And it is a bit night and day. What was already great from the old, slightly more robotic voices that we used to have, natural voices was a great improvement. When you listen to the HD versions of them, you start to get just those more natural tones that if somebody was actually speaking to you, they wouldn't just speak in the same kind of rhythm and things. There would be a bit of kind of ebb and flow. And it's amazing. It's still just US English at this stage, but it was amazing to hear that work well. So love that. Absolutely love the Fluid Dictation that Laurie mentioned there, which is coming to voice typing as well, which is Windows key H to dictate anywhere that you might otherwise type. And then the other really big one for me is that we've partly introduced already, but it continues to get enhancements, is what we call agent in settings. So that's a Copilot plus PC feature, and what it lets you do is just that discoverability. So the big thing, and if you go back to when we previously talked about these kind of things in similar sessions to this, discoverability is key. We can put as many features as we want into Windows, but if nobody can find them, it just doesn't work. And so what I love about this feature is that you can go into settings and just type what makes sense to you. You might type in, I'm colorblind, what can Windows help me with? And it would suggest color filters, for example. You might type in that you can't see what's on the the screen because it's too small, and it will come up with suggestions for how you can fix that. So I think that's really powerful, just having that ability to make things more discoverable, basically.
Yeah, the natural language that being built in to help in so many different areas. It's really it's life-changing for a lot of our customers, a lot of our consumers. Some of you are watching this on YouTube and some on X and some on Tech Community on LinkedIn. If you want to post a question for our experts, go to aka.ms/AMA/Windows 11 accessibility, and we'll be able to post your question on Tech Community, and we'll be able to read it here and answer it live. We do have a question on Tech Community. In our organization, we have a couple of colleagues who are blind. How can they use accessibility functions from Windows and Copilot to ease their tasks at an office job? Laurie, this is probably some of the stuff that you were talking about, but how can we as an organization give this to our colleagues and allow them to use Windows the way it should be used?
Mm-hmm. So there are a couple of features that come to mind. Of course, as I mentioned, we have a screen reader built right in to our operating system called Narrator. Many employees who are blind use a third party, so they'll use JAWS or NVDA that work very, very well and integrate directly with our products, our M365 products. But we do have a screen reader built right in. We have a read aloud throughout the applications that will read out content to people, not as robust as a screen reader. But then as I think about Copilot for accessibility, one of the really great tips I got from a colleague who is blind is if someone sends her an image that doesn't have descriptive text that will be read out by her screen reader, she can drop it into Copilot chat and get an incredibly rich description of that image.
So cool.
It's super. I use it in reverse. I do it in reverse now. So if I'm creating content with images, I'll drop them into chat and I'll specifically ask it to give me alt text or alternative text for a screen reader. So it's giving me a more concise description, but the appropriate amount of information for a screen reader, which I think is a great tip.
It is. And you bring up the alt text. And I think, when a lot of our people that are listening now, you tweet and you post on different socials and you have reports that you write and you do email and you post a picture somewhere, always do alt text. Really, it just helps all of your users. It helps all of your readers, all of your viewers, because the screen reader, or in this case, even Copilot, can let them know what's actually on the page in front of them. I'm glad that you brought that up, Laurie. But that's so cool. I didn't know you could do that with Copilot, so that's so cool.
And there's no excuse then at that point when doing alt text becomes that easy to just drop it into Copilot, let it do the hard work for you. There's no reason why you wouldn't really at that point.
Yeah,
and by the way,
awesome.
It also helps with SEO because it's more description of your image.
That's true. SEO being search engine optimization. We got another question on Tech Community. Many people, including myself, are unable to work anymore due to temporal dithering in Windows. And that's the screen flicker or flow rate control in Windows. That temporal dithering causes headaches and nausea, and it tires the brain. Please add an accessibility switch to turn this off in all versions of Windows Workstation and Server. I get the issue in Windows 11 and Windows Server 2025, even through Remote Desktop. Ben, you and I were talking about this earlier about that temporal dithering. How can you comment to this? Or what do you think we could do?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question, actually, because within Windows itself, there are no controls that can turn that function off. And that's largely because that function comes from either the graphic card side of things, so the drivers that our manufacturers will produce for those, or through the display panels itself. So quite often that temporal dithering side of things is because what it's trying to do is emulate what's called a 10-bit color panel by sort of converting that from 8-bit, and it's flicking colors back and forth. And so for many of us, it's not a problem, but for others, that can really cause headaches. And if you're light sensitive, that side of things, it can be a big problem. So I don't have an answer for it because I think it's something that will vary depending on the different manufacturers. But what I would really recommend we do is, rather than just say we don't have an answer for it, is that you make use of something that we do have, which is called the Enterprise Disability Answer Desk. And I would love it if you submit that question in there. By all means, I can always, if it's possible, I can always reach out to you afterwards and get you to kind of CC me in on it as well, because I'd be interested to track that conversation. But raise that with them. So this is a free offering that we have where you can ask us questions that you might have to do with disability and accessibility and that side of things. And let's just run that through and see if we may not have an immediate answer for that, but I think it's worth us pursuing that through that.
That's a great suggestion, Ben. And again, that the Accessibility Disability Answer Desk is aka.ms EDAD, Accessibility Disability Answer Desk. And of course, you can also, it's a great suggestion that they had was, if we could add a toggle in Windows to turn that on and off, I would ask that you go into our feedback hub. And just leave that feedback. You can do that on your computer in the feedback hub, or through, again, just right here, you can reply to your own message in Tech Community. Make sure Ben sees it, and then we can work with you from there to enter that feedback in. It is a great suggestion. Again, that was the aka.ms EDAD to send that in. Now, something else, Ben, that you and I were talking about is it's actually been a while since we've done one of these tech communities on accessibility. And so you went back and you were reviewing some of the older ones. And you've talked about, you and I had a conversation about, hey, and now, that was mentioned in that last session, and now we actually offer this. Tell me about some of the enhancements we've actually done over the last couple of years with Windows 11.
Yeah, it was really interesting to go back. Other than having to watch myself in a YouTube clip, it was fun to go back and kind of revisit what were we talking about at the time. And actually, one of the questions that we had was somebody said, love the live captions feature built into Windows 11. I also personally love that as well, as somebody that's hard of hearing. Worn hearing aids all my life. Live captions is amazing. Somebody asked during that session, do we have any plans for maybe live translation as part of that? Well, yes, we now have that. Copilot Plus PCs, if you turn on live captions, it can also translate as well. So some of these kind of things that we were talking about as, that would be nice to have, are there now. So I think things have come on leaps and bounds. There's we were, again, selfishly talking about things I really care about. At the time, we didn't have capabilities around what's called Bluetooth LE audio. So that's what a lot of hearing aids use these days, both to send sound, but also to control them. We now have capabilities in Windows 11 that let you control your hearing aids right from there in Windows. You can choose different audio profiles. You can adjust the volume on both hearing aids if you've got two. You can turn them on and off and just see the battery progress and all these kind of things. Just really powerful capabilities that are built right there. So I think I could probably reel off many more as well. I think the Copilot Plus PCs has been a real game changer because I would imagine some that are listening to this may not be aware of what those are. And those are, they're not just made by Microsoft. The Surface devices we do have are Copilot Plus PCs, but there are other manufacturers that produce these as well. And the big powerful capability they have is that they have an NPU chip. That means we can do a lot of AI right there on the device. And so that has allowed us to take really big strides forward. So that live translation capability, for example, can be done all on the device. You can be completely offline, and we're doing all that processing on the device on the fly. So a lot of capabilities have come around that I think are really just great steps forward.
Yeah, I agree with the Copilot Plus PCs. I'm so glad that you mentioned that we're not just talking about Surface Copilot Plus PCs. No, we're talking about third-party, all the different vendors that make laptops they're allowed to make Copilot Plus PCs and give you benefits, all these benefits as well. I'm going to go back to Laura. You had mentioned something earlier, and Ben, you did as well, about like screen readers and narrator and Zoom text. And Laura, you mentioned something about some of the different products. And we got a question in Tech Community. We still get requests from some of our users for third-party solutions for Zoom text and Dragon, etc. And this means we have to package them, license them. So could our users be unaware of how good Windows 11 is, in part because we were running Windows 10 22H2 until recently? Is there still a need to use these other solutions, Laurie?
Mhm. So that's a great question, and we do have a lot of features that support a variety of different disability types and neurodiversity within Windows 11. But there are some amazing third-party products on the market, like JAWS, like NVDA, Dragon, ZoomText, and I feel strongly that people should be able to use the technology that works best for them. Because if you think about someone who has been blind for a long time or since birth, they are likely using JAWS or NVDA. Those products have been around for 30 years. They are excellent. They're very robust tools. And so I think people should always explore what we have available in Windows, and we always want to make things available like our screen reader, like voice access. But again, I emphasize that people should always be empowered to use the technology that works best for them and what they're most comfortable with.
That's such a good answer, Laurie. Ben, did you have anything you want to add to that?
Laurie says it so much better than I could, but it is a question that comes up a lot, and I think it is great. I mean, if you've just recently gone from Windows 10 to 11, yes, you have an incredible amount of accessibility technologies that are built right there in the OS that you didn't have before, and definitely, as Laurie says, those should be explored. And for many, that will fit their need. But if they're already used to that third-party software, yeah, please don't try and save some money by taking it away from them. Make sure that they're empowered to make that decision.
I'm so glad you actually worded it that way too, because the people watching this are the IT pros that are packaging and maybe licensing and deploying those third-party tools. It might not be the end user that's using it, and we're just reinforcing to you IT pros, don't take away what they're comfortable using. Let your end users continue using the accessibility tools that have allowed them to be successful for so long. So thank you both for those answers, so eloquently put. We got this question that came in on X. Are there any features that make things easier for ADD and ADHD? We run a creative agency, so we're a neuro-spicy bunch. In other words, it's not just so much, I need larger text or I need to be able to read what's on the screen, but maybe I have ADD, I have ADHD. Any of the neurodiversity, also accessibility features. Is there anything that makes things easier for my end users with ADD, ADHD?
One feature that comes to mind, and Ben, remind me, I think this was new in Windows 11, but focus mode
Yes.
is an incredible feature that I should actually use more often. And it basically mutes all of the disruptions that pop up every day. It puts you into a do not disturb mode and mutes the Teams chats that pop up and the Outlook emails that pop up. And you can schedule it for a specific time, or you can turn it on the fly. And one of the interesting things about it is if you have a Spotify account, you can link your Spotify account to your focus mode. And when you go into focus mode, it will play your Spotify playlist for you, which I think is a great feature.
Focus mode is what immediately came to my mind as well. Ben, is there anything else that you were thinking about?
No, yeah, focus mode is the big one, specifically if we're thinking ADHD. I think from a neurodiversity perspective, we have a lot of capabilities around things like immersive reader that pops up in all different places. So it's there for you in your browser, that helps you kind of take away any of the other noise of the web page that you're maybe trying to digest, that kind of thing. But it's there in Office. It's there. It's actually even there in one of the Copilot Plus PC functionalities we have called Click to Do, which allows you to just take any text on the screen. It will find text. It will find images on the screen. And actually, if you select a bit of text that maybe even was inside an image, one of the capabilities it has is to take that over to Immersive Reader directly or to Reading Coach, and as well as kind of summarize it for you. So I think there's a lot of nice sort of sub capabilities that maybe people don't immediately think of there. But yeah, focus mode, that's only in Windows 11, but it's so simple to turn on. It's right there for you, right there down in the clock. And I use it often because it stops even those badge counts going up, willing you to go back to Teams and see who's sending me more emails. Or I guess in your case, Joe, are you not an inbox zero kind of person?
I am an inbox zero.
So knowing the counter's going up in there would almost certainly bring you straight back. So yeah,
I mean, when I'm on a Teams meeting and someone's sharing their screen and I can see that they have like 15 unread Teams or something like that, I already start getting
See,
anxious.
my equivalent to that is when I see people haven't done their Windows updates yet, and the things down in the corner getting increasingly angrier with them. I'm going, come on, apply your updates. But yeah, that was a different AMA.
It was you. And speaking of a different AMA, you did just mention a Click to Do on Copilot Plus PCs.
Yeah.
And our friend Eric Moe, in just the last AMA, that was the one with not the last one, but the one with Windows agents and AI, a part of this series today. He did a demo using Click to Do, and it was a really cool demo. So if you haven't seen that, go back and watch that AMA as well. Look at Eric's demo. The Click to Do it's a great feature that we've added as well. Now, when we're talking about Windows 11 and we're talking about all these accessibility features that we're building in or that we're able to add in through our third-party partners, how about VDI solutions like Windows 365? Are those also able to be made accessible for our end users?
Yeah, I think we have a really nice story to tell around that that we don't actually often tell at the moment. And so if you think of Windows 365, so that the whole concept around that is a cloud PC that you can access from anywhere. So wherever you go, you can access your own Windows Cloud PC. And so what's really powerful about that is that you could have maybe made changes in your cloud PC that work for you. So perhaps you've turned on a particular color filter, or you've made the text bigger or your cursor bigger. Wherever you go and access that cloud PC from, those changes you've made for you will follow you. So we have a device called the Windows 365 Link device. Nice small device that organizations will quite frequently put around wherever somebody needs to be able to just walk up and access their cloud PC quickly. And so even those Windows 365 Link devices actually now support voice access. That was actually another Ignite announcement, is that voice access is there right on that Link device before you even access the cloud PC, as well as some other accessibility features. But it does mean that in a particular setting, you could walk up to any Link device, maybe plug in a sort of FIDO device or something like that to identify yourself, and immediately have all the accessibility changes you have made for your cloud PC available to you right there. And I think that's really powerful. You're not going to need somebody to help you in some cases to get started with your device. Those changes will come around for you. So I think that's the big one for me, is just that ability to take that wherever you go. I think is very powerful.
It's the Link device is a great little device. If you have an account team, talk to them about maybe getting a demo Link device. You can see more information about Link at aka.ms/Windows 365 Link. Laurie, have you tried any of the accessibility features within Windows 365? Do you have a cloud PC or even through AVD, Azure Virtual Desktop?
I don't yet, but I'll be asking for one now.
I would imagine you will be.
Actually,
when you do,
Joe
Lurie also needs a Windows cloud PC. So
yes,
go ahead, Ben.
Absolutely. All I was going to say, sorry for speaking over you, was that one of the recent announcements we made around the cloud PCs is that it's now possible to have them AI enabled. And so that will start to bring some of those functionalities that we've mentioned already in Copilot Plus PCs even into the cloud PCs. And so Click to Do is one of those initial ones that have been made part of that. So without even having a Copilot Plus PC, if you had a cloud PC that's AI enabled, you'll be able to start to access some of that functionality in there instead, which is great. But I'm keeping hold of my Copilot Plus PC. Nobody's taken that away from me.
You've talked a lot about Copilot Plus PCs, and I know I actually don't have a Copilot Plus PC, so I have a Surface device, but it's not Copilot Plus PC. And since you're talking about Copilot Plus PCs, and our end users, our customers, they're actually they're looking at Copilot Plus PCs as well. What are some of the accessibility features available besides again, we talk about Click to Do, but what are some accessibility features available with the Copilot Plus PC to give them an edge over other devices? So I can go to my leadership and tell them why we need to get a Copilot Plus PC instead. What are some of the accessibility features that make them just edge up the competition a little bit?
Yeah, I think I've probably touched on many, but I've spread it across this conversation by sort of dropping little Easter eggs as we went. So it's probably worth us just kind of going back on that. And so that live caption capability, that doesn't need a Copilot Plus PC, but the translation capability does. So that's in there, and that can have some benefits from an accessibility perspective. The capability I mentioned earlier, where you can go into settings and just use natural language to find what might suit you, that is a Copilot Plus PC feature as well. All the kind of benefits of Click to Do, and actually Click to Do is another way that you could potentially get alt text of an image. So if you've got an image that was just full of text, for starters, maybe go and see if you can find a better way of doing that rather than trying to use an image that is full of text. But nonetheless, if you need to, you can pull the text out there very quickly with Click to Do. And I do that quite often where needs must. So that's one. And then we've also kind of added sort of superpowers to some of the other capabilities. So I believe the fluid dictation capability Laurie was mentioning earlier, that is a Copilot Plus PC feature because we use that NPU chipset right there on the device. And I was testing that feature out earlier, and you can open up Task Manager and you can see the chip kicking in when it's needed and doing its job, doing that all there right on the device. But we've done other things as well. So Narrator now has the ability with key press that if you come across an image, you can point it at that, and again, it will use that local NPU to describe that image in the same way that Copilot will do for you if you were to drop that in. So there's loads of really nice kind of capabilities that are just being dropped in on top of what we have, so that if you do have that kind of PC, you'll be able to benefit from that chipset for that.
Great. There's a lot of good features. And I know I just told Laurie I don't have a Windows 365 cloud PC. Ben, I told you I don't have a Copilot Plus PC, so I hope my leadership is listening as well. Exactly. We got this question, Laurie. I'm going to come to you on this question about agents. And again, we just had an AMA on managing Windows AI agents in Windows. But when we think about agents, we want to make sure that as our developers are building agents, as our vendors are building agents for us, with agents becoming the trend, how do we make sure that those are accessible? Either what kind of guidance do we have to give to our agent suppliers or to my developers as we build them ourselves?
So if there are a couple of things here, one, we've got clear standards on accessibility. We've got Web Content Accessibility Guideline standards, EN 301-549 standards in Europe. So they're very clearly spelled out, font size, colors. As we're making things fancy, we want to be sure, beautiful design can also be accessible design. So those are kind of the strict standards that we adhere to when we're thinking about building agents. But with regard to testing, the best advice I can give you, test with disabled and neurodivergent users. If you want to ensure that people who are blind and using screen readers can access your agent, test with someone who's blind. Putting a blindfold on is not the same as being a full-time screen reader user. I don't use a traditional keyboard and mouse, so I use speech to text, and I can use a trackpad, but I rely on tabbing and things like that. It's impossible for someone who doesn't have that lived experience to truly test accurately. So it's very important to test with disabled and neurodivergent users. But also one thing to consider when you're thinking about your agents, I'm going to put a little spin here and add to this question. We're having a lot of conversations with customers about building agents for accessibility. For example, we have customers who are building agents to make workplace accommodations or adjustments more discoverable. We have all kinds of information about disability at Microsoft, but it gets tricky to make it discoverable. So we've built our own accessibility virtual assistant agent that sits on top of our disability hub. We're building agents like a neurodiversity navigator to help not only employees who are neurodivergent get support, but managers who have neurodivergent employees on their teams get manager training and resources they may need, or to help a parent within your organization who has a child with a new diagnosis navigate that diagnosis. So I digress a little bit, but as you're thinking about building agents that are accessible, also think about leveraging ways that you can use agents for accessibility.
That's such a good point. I didn't even think about that myself. I do think about, before I joined Microsoft, and I've been there for 13 years, so it was back in the 2000s and prior, you said, don't just put on a blindfold and pretend that you're vision impaired and see if you can use the agent. It's not the same. And, in my past life, I've had colleagues that would tell me the same thing. Don't just sit in a wheelchair and pretend that you can't walk. It's different if you actually live that life. And I appreciate that you actually said it that way. Don't put on the blindfold. Don't pretend. Actually, go out to your users and see if they can use these products. And if they can't, find out why, and then work with your developers or work with your partners to make sure that those features are actually added. I think we're probably running short on time. I'm going to have to check with my producers there on how much time we have left. We have, we can actually go a little bit longer. So when we think about, again, we've talked about accessibility enterprise, we've talked about Windows 11, we've talked about Copilot Plus PCs, we've talked about Windows 365. What other kind of when you talk to your customers, Ben and Laurie, what are some of the questions that they're asking you that you know might be unique to what we're offering Windows 11, or anything that they have found that why doesn't Microsoft offer, and how we're working around that? Is there anything like that you have to talk to your customers about?
That's a good, tricky question to be trying to wrap us up on. But yeah, no, I mean, it's, I think in a lot of cases, it's been about just how can they make these accessibility, I guess, features available to the users without compromising other elements that they might do. And so every organization is very different. Earlier this year, we ran a session actually on how IT can make sure that they enable these different accessibility settings, and that's well worth looking at actually. And since we ran that session, we've even made it even easier to get hold of, for example, the speech models that we use for some of the capabilities we've talked about today to put those even in a kind of offline scenario, so that no internet connection is needed even to get those set up in the first place. So I think that's kind of a big one, is that even though we've put a lot of capabilities in Windows 11, even if you are running this in a largely offline world, you can still give these capabilities to users. There are still ways to do that, and pretty much all the capabilities that you heard about today in terms of specifically Windows 11 features, they're all there and designed to work even if you are offline. It's just that many of them on that initial connection need to go and download a particular speech model, and even those can be pre-deployed as well. So lots of options. I don't know if that's directly answering your question, but I segued in my way through it to that. So
I appreciate that. Yeah, go ahead, Laurie.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Ben. And one of the questions I get all the time is, well, one of the observations is that people just aren't aware of these features. We've done a great job of building these features into our products, making them discoverable. Again, is a trickier part. And I think raising awareness within organizations is super important. And that's something we can certainly help with. That's part of my role and part of the program that I lead. Start with if you have a disability employee resource group or employee network, start with them and do a session to highlight all of the accessibility features that are available in the products that you already own. You have them today. They're at your fingertips. It's just raising awareness. And again, it goes back to creating an inclusive environment for your employees with disabilities, employees who are neurodivergent.
Yeah, and we just had a link up there. I'm just going to go ahead and read it off. aka.ms/windows/accessibility features for some of those features that we do offer. And I think, Laurie, that gets into what my last question was going to be to both of you. What else can IT teams do to make sure that their users are comfortable with the technology that are being deployed to them, and then they can use that technology? How can we make sure that the IT staff lets the users know that these features are available for them?
I mean, I would extend upon what I just said and kind of maybe refer back to when we were talking about don't take away third-party software. That's a big element of things, but in the same way, don't take away the built-in capabilities either. Maybe particularly in education, we see every setting turned off. There's this whole kind of intention. We don't want anybody messing around any settings, and there are other use cases where that happens as well. And I would say go and review what is required at a minimum to be able to access these settings for a user to be able to go and turn these things on for themselves, and don't assume that they're not required. We have this quite a lot actually, where I will try and talk about accessibility when I'm talking to a customer about why they maybe should already be on Windows 11, and frequently they'll say, no, we don't need accessibility. That's not something that's required in our organization. Well, yeah, it is. You may not know it, but it definitely is. And so taking that seriously and making sure that you're not just outright disabling these things, maybe because you just are sort of unaware that they are there. Make sure you're thinking about those, and that you're not blocking those out.
Great.
That's a really good point, Ben. And I think often we underestimate the breadth of the disability community. And it's 1.3 billion people in the world identify as disabled. And 1 in 5 people identifies neurodivergent, and that number only goes up with the younger generation. So it's our workforce today, and it is certainly the future of our workforce. And 83% of us will experience a disability of some sort during our working age, even if it's temporary, where you've sprained your wrist and you need to use speech to text for a period of time. Or if you think about captions, if you're in a loud environment and you need to get through a training video, you need to turn captions on to get through that video. That's considered a situational disability. And frankly, if we're lucky enough, we're all going to age into disability at some point as we get older. And it may be, I like dark mode as I get older, and my eyeballs age. So it's a broad community. It's not one person that you don't know. It's all of us, and it's going to touch all of us at some point.
You mentioned dark mode. I'm just going to give a little behind the scenes anecdote. Is when we set up for these AMAs, we have to make sure our lighting is right. I've got a window over here and a window over here, and it happens to be cold, sleet, rain right now. So the light is different today than it was yesterday. So I'm told, okay, so to open up a Word document on one of your monitors, because the bright white will act as that window light, but I'm in dark mode. So actually opening up Word did nothing for me, and my notepad is in dark mode, so I couldn't even do it from there. So as an anecdote about, as you're talking about that, about dark mode. So here in Tech Community, we actually have a couple of links I want to share with you. We have an AI skills for accessibility training, and that's aka.ms/AI skills, the number 4 accessibility. Again, that's AI skills for accessibility. And that's for Windows accessibility. For accessibility for IT pros and just AI and making sure that you're aware of it. We also have an accessibility for IT pros, and that's aka.ms/accessibility for IT pros, just like it sounds. Talking about some of the things that Laurie and Ben were answering my question, like how can I make sure that my end users are aware of this as an IT pro? How can I make these available? Again, that was aka.ms accessibility for IT pros. And finally, one of the blogs that we release on Tech Community is called a Skilling Snack. And we have a Skilling Snack. This is a lot of resources that we put together for you so you don't have to go find them. A Skilling Snack on accessibility features. So you can go to aka.ms/skilling snack/Windows accessibility to access that. And this Skilling Snack, again, it's not its own blog. What it is, it's a collection of blogs that gives you just a lot of information for you to bring back to work and to help you with your accessibility journey, or if you're an IT pro, to help bring that into your workplace. I want to thank you both for joining. Any last thoughts, Laurie, and then we'll go to last thoughts for Ben, on all the things that we can do today that maybe we couldn't do before, and what's coming in the future?
Well, I'm super excited about AI, of course, and the potential that it brings to create inclusive experiences. And it's even things like, I'll give you an example. We partnered with the Indiana Pacers basketball team recently to embed captions into their in-arena games. So now if you are deaf, hard of hearing, or even a non-native English speaker, that's an inclusive experience for you that would have been difficult, if not impossible, before. So AI is not just making things doable. I mean, it's making things possible that weren't possible before, and in so much easier and quicker way. So I'm super excited about the potential for AI.
Awesome. Ben?
Yeah, me too. And I love that story, sort of personally, where just what was amazing that we do that. And actually going back to what Laurie was talking about us all needing these kind of accessibility features at some point, actually gives me a bit of kind of hope for the future, right? That for whatever may be waiting for me through life, that by doing this work right now, we're making these features available so that they're there when we need them and as and when we need them. And so that gives me a bit of hope for the future, that hopefully whatever awaits me. I mean, I've been hard of hearing all my life. Come on, give me a break. But I'm sure there's more to come as life goes on. And it's great to know that those capabilities are there waiting for when the moment comes.
That's great. For everyone else, some of you have not had a chance to watch this as it was happening. Maybe you're watching the stream later on. We will keep this question period open in Tech Community until Friday, this coming Friday. Today's Tuesday, as we're doing this live. at noon US Pacific time. So if you're watching this stream on Tech Community, again, please go back, ask a question. We will be monitoring these questions all the way through Friday, and even if there's replies after that. So make sure you get your questions answered. That's what we're here for. Thank you for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laurie.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.